Why you need an emergency fund. Now, this is going to be a much more serious and sobering conversation this time around. Right now, the street I'm walking in was completely flooded. And many of the homes that I'm walking next to were completely flooded. The Harlingen area, which is very close to this area, received 21.5 inches of rain last week. So almost 22 inches. And when you're talking about flooding, there's bagging up of water sometimes. So that can be even more than the 22 inches that's reported. So just devastated this area. And anyone who received flooding in this area, if that's you, I'm just so sorry to hear that. I know how tough that is. This time, by really a miracle, my wife and I's home did not flood inside. Now, we received a little bit of damage. Our outside air conditioning unit had some parts in it that we needed to replace for it to work, and we did have some flooding in our garage, so we lost a few things in the garage and had to pay for power washing and some things like that to get the garage cleaned up. But very, very minimal compared to many. And if you find that in your situation, I pray that God gives you recovery of your losses and that you get to a place of equilibrium as soon as possible. But we did flood in 2019. So I know what it's like to go through a flood in your home. And so just like the title said, you absolutely need an emergency fund. Now, if you've been on any of these talks with me and you followed me and watched, you know that I talk about having that starter emergency fund, a $2,000 emergency fund. Now, I'll tell you, even in this situation, even though we received minimal damage, about $250 on our air conditioning unit, another $250 for the power washing, plus during the time of this particular flood, which was last Thursday, we were unable to actually get to our home until Saturday. And so we had to eat out. We had to stay with friends and family on those days. So we helped out as a gesture to pay for meals and things like that. So we easily spent within those few days $1,000. And so that $2,000 emergency fund is just so important. But I would like to go back to 2019 when the inside of our home actually flooded, okay? I talk about that $2,000 emergency fund, and that's important to capture the small emergencies. But if the inside of your home floods, which is a major event, $2,000 is probably not going to cut it, okay? You need that 3 to 6 month emergency fund, and really you need that 6 month emergency fund. Just to throw a stat out there, about 28% of Americans have a 6 month emergency fund or more. That's about a quarter of us that actually have a 6 month emergency fund. And let me tell you, if something happens like your home flooding, you need contractors in there right away. Another thing that I'll mention is, I suggest you get flood insurance, okay? Have flood insurance. Now, if you're in a situation where you were affected by this particular flooding and you don't have flood insurance, it's no good to tell you, I told you, you need to have flood insurance. Once you're actually in the situation, I think, at least for me, from my perspective, is if I know you and I can help you in any way, I'm just gonna help you. I'm not gonna be the self-righteous, I told you so. But if you did not flood, and you're in a situation where you can learn for the future from this, as soon as possible, as soon as it comes up, go ahead and get flood insurance. Now, flood insurance, from what I've seen, is anywhere from around $600 annually, so $600 a year, all the way up to about $950 a year. For me personally, our flood insurance for this particular year costed us a little over $600. So I highly recommend flood insurance to protect yourself. And going back to 2019, when our home flooded, that's what really saved us. But it takes some time for that flood insurance to actually kick in and pay out. In the meantime, the water has come into your home immediately, and you have to take measures and steps to take care of that. Things need to happen, like the drywall needs to be cut out. Why? Even a small amount of water in your home, if it wets the drywall, mold and mildew and things like that start to creep up behind the walls where you can't see it. And that's something that you want to get taken care of right away. And it costs to actually get that cut out of your home. Contractors are going to need to do things. Like we had, I think they're called dehumidifiers, actually put in the home, these machines to actually dry the foundation. We had everything cut out. Everything that touched the water was taken out. Well, during that time, that was very costly to get the contractors in to start that process. I remember my hand shaking, making $5,000 checks to get all of this stuff going and to get the process going before the flood insurance actually kicked in. Now, the flood insurance kicked in, but to tell you overall, that remodel was around a $90,000 project, okay? That's a lot of money. And the flood insurance kicked in and covered the majority of that, but again, it took some time for that to kick in. Another thing that I learned during that time period was that flood insurance, or my insurance, did not cover lodging. My wife and I needed somewhere else to stay, so we actually rented a place to stay. That was not covered with the flood insurance. I needed to have cash available right away to take care of that. Another thing that the insurance did not cover was storage. There were things in our home that we needed to store. We needed to store our bed. It's a huge bed with a big backboard and everything. That had to be disassembled. And we also had to pay for a truck to take all of the contents that we had in our home that we could not fit in that rental to one of those storage places. And we had to pay for the storage too. None of that covered with the flood insurance. So you have to think about all of these things. You absolutely need that 6-month emergency fund, in my opinion. You want to have that for your peace of mind. Now, let's say that right now, you're caught in that situation where you don't have that $2,000 emergency fund. You certainly don't have a 6-month emergency fund. Now is the time to allow the situation that's happening in our area, or that has happened in our area, this 21 inches plus of rain that flooded a lot of the Rio Grande Valley area that I live in. Let this that we're going through be something to teach you about your future, to do better with your finances so that you're ready when something like this happens to you. You can be ready, okay? If you change your mindset, okay? Now, 28% of people actually have a 6-month emergency fund. 42% of people have no emergency fund at all whatsoever. And I'm just going to tell you, with what's happening now, this devastation, this flooding that we have in our area, something's going to happen to you. I don't know what it's going to be. It may not be a flood. It may be something else. But something is going to visit you. And I don't want to be negative, but life is just that way. Something is going to happen to you. Something that's going to require some resources from you. You may as well get in a mindset that allows you to put provisions aside to where you can respond to an emergency that happens to you, okay? So let's just say that you don't even have that $2,000 emergency fund. I know here recently quite a few people got their tax returns, okay? Tax filing, the tax day, April 15th is coming up here soon. And some people have already filed their taxes and already received a tax return of more than $2,000. If you're in that situation where you're still waiting for that, it's more than $2,000, then it's done. Put that starter emergency fund aside with that tax return. If you can sell some things, sell something that you're not using, get that $2,000 emergency fund in place. And then, again, let situations like this teach you and get you ready in your mind, and then put a plan together to get to that 6-month emergency fund, because something is gonna happen. Again, I don't know what it is. It may not be a flood. It may be a job loss. It may be some illness that you have to deal with and take care of. If you're on a high deductible insurance program, it may be that you fall over and break a tooth or lose a tooth. And maybe you need some revenue to actually pay for that to meet the deductible before the dentist goes in and does that repair to your tooth. Whatever it is, let this be a teacher for you to get you ready. Because there are so many people devastated now with the flooding that's happening, that has happened rather, in our area. Something like this might visit you. I want you to be ready. Think about this. Take it to heart. Get that quick $2,000 emergency fund, and then start to make your plan of what you're going to do to get that 3 to 6 month emergency fund. Just to give you an idea or to help you conceptualize it, let's say that your expenses, those things that you have to pay for monthly, let's say it's $4,000 a month that you need to actually get by your expenses for the month. Well, if it's $4,000 a month, 4 times 6 is $24,000. That would be your fully funded 6-month emergency fund. Start thinking about that. Start making a plan so that in the future, a year from now, you are ready. And I'd also recommend, if you're anywhere that has any possibility of having a flood, to have flood insurance. That's $600 to $950 a year to pay for flood insurance is absolutely worth it. 200% worth actually spending that to have that peace of mind and to also have that ability to access that if a tragedy, a complete devastation like what has visited our area visits you. I hope that this is helpful to you. I'm going to be doing these videos on YouTube, whether there's one person watching or there's a million people watching. So go ahead, go to my YouTube channel, or you're at my YouTube channel now, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I upload a video. Again, I hope this one helps you to be ready when life's emergencies hit you. Thanks again for listening.